Hello, this is Zach Clark, Development and Leadership Coaching. I want to try to encourage you today, if you're a ministry leader, because it seems like I spend a lot of my time doing just that, with leaders calling me and talking to me about things that are really frustrating them as it relates to moving their ministry forward. And more often than not, it's around the whole idea of fundraising. There's just a huge amount of reluctance out there of ministry leaders who are feeling pressure. There's always more opportunities and more resources needed, and the way those resources come is through giving, isn't it? So there's this real sense of pressure constantly to raise money and to raise more money. But it is something that many leaders really struggle with. And so, yes, I spend a lot of my time trying to encourage them. So I want to try to equip you today, though, and kind of open your thinking up to a different way to approach this. And it starts with this simple idea. I want you to stop fundraising. I want you to stop fundraising. And I want you to just start leading. You're already leading. And so this really is a step up and a step forward. I want to challenge you to reinvent yourself a little bit by beginning to break away from this idea that fundraising is somehow a compartment or component of the ministry. One of the things that I know many leaders are really doing subconsciously is they see all this ministry work. Here's the ministry work that I do, and then, oh yeah, I have to do some fundraising as well. So there's these things that we're passionate about, that we love, where we really feel a sense of calling and fulfillment. But then this idea that, oh man, we have to raise money. You know, somebody needs to raise money. I guess it's going to be me. There's no one else around here but me. So I'll have to raise money. And that usually begins, I think, very early on in the role of a leader, and it really stays with them. But I want to encourage you today, because the road to greater impact and seeing more resources coming to your ministry really does not come from this idea of our ministry's getting stronger and stronger and better, and I am needing to get better at fundraising. That's just not where it comes from. So stop fundraising and start leading. Let me give you a few things to really think about that will help you. Number one, abolish all thinking in your brain that this fundraising thing is somehow a suit that you put on. It's a set of skills that you are awkward with, that you'll never feel comfortable with, and you'll just have to struggle through it somehow. This is not a suit to put on. It is the idea of advancing a ministry that you're called to, that you're passionate about, telling a story that only you can tell. That is what I really want you to focus on. So when you feel yourself kind of, well, it's time to get into my fundraising mode, time to put on my fundraiser hat, that is just not the road. You may be effective to some extent, but you're always going to be a limiter on the resources that can really come for your ministry. So that'd be number one. Number two, it helps to think of a couple of models. I'm going to give you some biblical models that you may not have thought about in terms of advancing a ministry, but they're great models of leadership. One is, of course, Nehemiah. If you look at Nehemiah, the thing that I think is very relevant in his life on this idea of stop fundraising and start leading is Nehemiah had a very clear vision. He had a very clear call from God to lead his people. And what you see with Nehemiah, though, is the roles that he ends up having to take on, the skills that he ends up having to live out, were not at all what he expected. To me, one of the best pictures of this is when he talks about laying bricks on the wall with one hand and holding his sword to fight off enemies in the other. I don't think that that's what he anticipated having to do when he first started this project. But there's Nehemiah. In one hand he's got the bricks, in one hand he has the sword, being fully himself. Second great example, of course, is Moses. I love Moses as an example of this because Moses was a very reluctant leader. When God first calls him and challenges him with the vision of taking the people of Israel out of Egypt, you see Moses saying, but what about this, and what about this, and what about this? And finally, when he runs out of excuses, he says, Lord, send someone else. You maybe have thought that about raising money. Can't we just hire someone to do this? Can't someone else do this? No. You might be able to build a team. You can build an approach. But in your story, unfortunately, you are Moses, because you're the one with the call and the passion and the clear picture of what you see God doing in the lives of people. No one else can do that for you. And the last picture I think we see in Moses' life that is so clear about this issue is when God challenges him to go before the people and take up an offering for the tabernacle. We love this verse, don't we? Because we see that all these people gave more than was needed. But what you have to do is back up a little bit. And when God shows up and starts talking to Moses and gives them the plans for the tabernacle, he goes into tremendous detail about the plans, all of the specifics of the tabernacle. And then he says, now go forward and take up an offering. It says that Moses went before the people and told them everything the Lord had said. And then they began to bring the work and the offering for the building of the temple, of the tabernacle. So the reason why this is so important to get in your heart is Moses had to communicate a plan. God chose to communicate a plan through a man, through a leader, and then that leader had to open his mouth and speak the words of that plan. So you have to connect who you really are to the work of the ministry. I want you to stop. Try this for 2 weeks. Stop using the brochures. Stop using the material. Stop using the fundraising material and the response cards, and start telling the story and telling people the plan on how you're going to move forward. And I want to close with this thought on this video. The answer is to be more of yourself, not less of yourself. And if you're stuck in a mode where you're thinking fundraising is somehow not you, that means you're doing something that is less than who you really are. I want you to be who you are. Be who you only you can be for the ministry. Thank you.